The world's fourth largest sovereign wealth fund is accelerating their Bitcoin buying and doubling and tripling down at every single turn, accelerating the Bitcoin supply shock as we're seeing more and more of these big players start to come in and buy Bitcoin. But it leaves the question, is the United States going to get left behind? Because we had some shaky things come out of Scott Bessent the other day. So we're going to get into all of that. But first, let's dive in to what we saw from the UAE Sovereign Wealth Fund. And there is a very close connection to the United States here with all of this. So stick with me to the end of this video because I'm going to connect a few dots and uncover potentially how the United States might be falling behind in the Bitcoin race. Because the UAE, ladies and gents, now revealed that they doubled down and added $147 million to their sovereign wealth fund Bitcoin exposure. So it leads you to ask, as they're allocating nearly $700 million towards BlackRock's iBet ETF, how is this going to play out? Because Abu Dhabi and the Al Warda investments are now allocating 11.14 million in shares. So these sovereign wealth funds now view Bitcoin as a diversification tool against inflation and low correlation to those traditional assets. So now that we've seen the massive amounts of institutional adoption, and you guys know I've been showing this a lot here lately, where the OTC desks are running dry, and that's where the big players seem to be getting their Bitcoin, including the custodians of this Bitcoin ETF. There's only 155,000 left. Now, the structured ETF access simplifies digital asset exposure, triggering broader institutional Bitcoin allocations. So they keep having to file, and we see these things come over time. So these holdings represent a, quote, powerful institutional endorsement of Bitcoin's role in an institutional portfolio. And it's a bigger trend of the sovereign wealth funds, which you guys know that I went over the other day. Norway, the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, is doubling down on their MSTR exposure and all of the proxies related to Bitcoin. So although they didn't double down on the Bitcoin exposure completely, the Norwegian pension or sovereign wealth fund now doubled and tripled down on their MSTR, giving them that indirect exposure towards Bitcoin. Well, the UAE did something different. They went straight into Bitcoin. And as you can see, they are the fourth largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. So are they a leading charge in the crypto investments, right? Because we're seeing the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund having nearly 863 million in assets linked to Bitcoin. And then we also had the UAE, who got, 700 million worth of Bitcoin exposure. So these guys are changing the game. They're looking at these sovereign wealth funds using to invest in Bitcoin. We've got a bunch of other ones, like Kazakhstan are even contemplating putting currencies in their assets into own cryptocurrencies. And we've got the latest in the U.S. executive order for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But something that's interesting is we're seeing a lot of the quote unquote crypto millionaires move to the UAE. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are they doing that? Well, it's because of all the tax advantages. And essentially, the UAE is being very friendly to the Bitcoin and crypto industries, allowing for a lot of these crypto bros, so to speak, to move to the UAE and do it without a problem. The problem is that the United States is losing out on a lot of this. So although that they're seeing this, and the United States secured a $200 billion investment from the UAE, it seems like the UAE is getting farther and farther ahead of the United States when it comes to the Bitcoin and their Bitcoin movement. So now we are starting to see this come to fruition as 1.4 trillion invested into the US. But where is the US's investment in Bitcoin? Because we had Scott Bessent come online yesterday and essentially said, hey, the US just needs to stop selling Bitcoin, right? They're going to find budget neutral ways to buy Bitcoin. Well, something interesting that a lot of people have been speculating on here fairly recently is that the US will revalue their gold to buy Bitcoin because that will be a quote unquote budget neutral way. But he also said this, that they're not going to revalue gold. They doubt it. Right? So even though the United States allegedly has this 198,000 Bitcoin, Scott Bessent said that their Bitcoin was closer to 150,000, right? So the Treasury is committed to exploring these budget neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin and expand the reserve and become this Bitcoin superpower of the world. But where is it? I am now questioning all of this because we saw Bo Hines resign the other day. Bo Hines was the young gun. He was coming in swinging hot, essentially telling everybody, hey, you know what? We are going to be the Bitcoin and the crypto, the digital asset, whatever phrase he was using. It all involved Bitcoin in some way, shape, or form, where he said the United States is going to be the leader in this industry. Well, newsflash, buddy. We're seeing the UAE start to come in on sovereign wealth funds. We're starting to see the Norwegian pension fund start to come in. And where is the United States on all of this buying? It seems like they keep delaying. And this is where my honest thesis of the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is we're not going to see any buying from the United States until 2028 or beyond. I think that we're not going to see any Bitcoin buying from this administration. And I hope I'm wrong with that because we think we're just going to be, I think we're just going to delay on all of this. There was already concerns around the U.S.'s slow pace of putting together the strategic Bitcoin reserve. About 7 hours earlier, his comments on Fox Business were interpreted that the Treasury wasn't looking to buy Bitcoin. We've also started the 21st century. We're not going to be buying that, but we're going to use confiscated assets. We're nearly 55 billion market cap, right? They said it's with all of this, right? They said that they potentially had less Bitcoin than actually they stated originally. So with all of this, the United States has backed down on their ability to acquire. They're not going to revalue the gold. They're going to be backing down on all of this. But just how much Bitcoin do you think that they're going to have if Scott Bessent is estimating and he's hundreds of billions of dollars off? So it's all estimated that the U.S. is having less Bitcoin than the 198 million here shown by Bitcoin treasuries and the claim of all of this. But is the United States potentially setting up to do something similar to what we've seen to the UAE? And that is setting up a sovereign wealth fund to buy Bitcoin. Maybe they don't want to do it and hold it directly on the United States balance sheet, right? This is something that I've been looking at and kind of pondering on because they haven't done anything with this since February 3rd. I honestly haven't heard anything about that. And of course, we know who's in charge of this. It's Howard Lubnick, who is formerly of Cantor Fitzgerald. And for those of you guys who've been coming to the channel, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. But either way, I've been showing this portfolio for quite some time where nearly 50% of their entire portfolio is MSTR. So, of course, that's the Bitcoin proxy. And we see Senator Cynthia Lummis, of course, vouching for all of this, saying, hey, you know what? This is a big win. We're going to start to see the United States chug forward with all of this. But hey, with all of this, I'm asking the question, when we see these sovereign wealth funds be a little bit, quick moving, so to speak, where are we going to see the United States start to come in? Because everybody's been saying, hey, you know what? Look at this. Look at the debt clock that we got humming here. Look at the Doge. We're saving so much money over here, right? So if you're saying all of these things, it doesn't seem like the US is very proactive, let's call it, with the amount of, I guess, let's say, with the amount of Bitcoin buying that we could be doing. Because all of these guys, right, we see more and more of these companies, these publicly traded companies start to come on. And then the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, right, these governments, they're starting to come in and buy more Bitcoin as well. And that's not even counted here on these Bitcoin buys. But what we are seeing, these IBIT Bitcoin ETF, right? It already has 742,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet there. Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund is adding to that with all of that. But why is the United States delaying all this? And why do we have Scott Bessent sticking his foot in his mouth on national television telling us that, hey, you know what? The US just doesn't need to sell any more Bitcoin. I mean, it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't add up. Now, I don't think anybody should be selling any Bitcoin, and that's why I've partnered with my friends over at Salt Lending. So you could go to saltlending.com/greencandle. You guys go to there right now. If you go to that platform, you could get cash today for your Bitcoin. You could do all that. They've got some of the most competitive rates at 8.95%. Look, they might give you a better offer if you guys go in and sign in through the saltlending.com/greencandle. You have to go to that website to get this exclusive offer, because if you go just to them, they're not going to give you the green candle special. So you got to go there. There's 12-month duration, 70% LTV, and on top of it, they got the Salt Shield. All of this, right? The no liquidation solution. So you don't got to sweat it, folks. They got the green candles in the background. Look, the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund is looking at Bitcoin as something ripe to buy. So we need to be looking at that and saying, hey, you know what? Watch what the big dogs are doing. Let's keep stacking. So this is why you guys come to the Green Candle live chats. So come to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. Get your Lightning wallets ready, because we're about to give you guys some free sats courtesy of my friends over at the Bitcoin Well. You buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well after signing up at bitcoinwell.com/greencandle. You will get 2 chances to win 1 million sats. We're doing it right here, right now. Hit that subscribe button. Smoke the like. 586 sats. All you got to do is show up to the Green Candle live chats when I'm coming in and race to get as much Bitcoin as possible. Or if you missed the chance, McLovin, All Night Hider, the goats in the chat, maybe those guys scooped it up before you. You could just go into bitcoinwell.com/greencandle, enter in, and then on top of it, these large Bitcoin transactions with Bitcoin Well Infinite, you get 50K smackers or more. You got to do that because we're seeing some of these publicly traded companies start to come on. And the interesting thing is, right, is this supply shock, it's coming. It's not a matter of when. It's a matter of how quickly we're going to start to see this. So for McLovin's asking in the chat, good Lightning wallet. So a good non-KYC that I use for this purpose is Speed. So you could go to Speed Wallet and get that. I recommend that. Because in the United States, we also had, Wallet of Satoshi. Some of these other guys leave. Definitely recommend getting Speed Wallet or maybe Aqua as well. So I would recommend doing that. You guys can go to, I use Speed Wallet. Those guys are the best. I had to make sure it was Speed and not Flash. But Speed, you could get that very quickly. And I mean, I've done it where I got some sats. I think I have 150 sats on my Speed wallet there. So, and I've done that just by getting some free sats from the Bitcoin Well. So make sure you guys download that Speed wallet for that. So, and you got to do it quick because we're seeing a potential supply shock here. We have 155,000 Bitcoin left on exchanges, and we got Bitcoin on exchanges chart coming up here, where last time I saw it, it was at 2.25 million. Let's see what we're sitting at here right now. We're going to share this tab. Oh, no, that's USDT. Where do we got this chart here? Bitcoin on all exchanges chart. Here we go. I don't know why I was showing at first when I clicked on it there, but 2.24 million. And on top of that, we got Bitcoin humming along, right? I mean, we're down 1% today, but we're still at 117,000 per Bitcoin, right? So the haters, of which there are many, are absolutely disgusted. We are seeing Bitcoin still hum along at 117,000, and we haven't even cut interest rates. We have 33 days until that could potentially happen, just over a month. And man, the chances of cutting interest rates are actually coming down pretty good. If you guys were here with me yesterday, I showed this. We had a 95% chance of this happening, of just one interest rate cut, and a 5% chance to cut 50 basis points. Now we've got a 15% chance we don't cut. So we're seeing some swings around here. So I recommend you guys keep coming to these Bitcoin live streams with me, because I'm tracking this very closely, folks. 15.1% chance is nothing to frown at. There's a puncher's chance coming in. So I think that we got to keep a very close eye on where we are potentially seeing the Fed's rate cut going, because the Treasury does claim that it has the 15 to 20 billion in BTC, but much stems from this Bitfinex hack, and the coins are not yet forfeited to the US. If kept, it could make one of the largest wealth transfers in history. But we aren't there yet, which is interesting, right? The US is claiming that they've obtained all this Bitcoin, but they haven't done it. We're still waiting for, the likes of these folks to cut interest rates. Now, I know Trump is going to be pushing for that, and we all know what happens when interest rates cut. Things go skyrocketing in flight and will absolutely take off. Now, I'm going to keep this Friday rip a little short for you guys. Thank you guys all for hopping in. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, telling a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch you guys all at the next one.